Hi, everybody. Welcome to No Shame, No Blame, a podcast about emotional healing, growth, and breaking generational cycles. I'm Brandi, your host, and for the very select few of you that have been here before, you may notice things look and sound a little different around here, which we'll unpack in a minute. I want to apologize ahead of time if some of the info or stories are redundant, but they may be necessary for context. If you're new, welcome, settle in. This is a great episode for you to find me on because things around the podcast and what I want for it are evolving a bit right now. Notice I didn't say changing. These are two different things. And since we're here, I may as well explain what semantics are, because you're going to hear me say that many times this episode. The Oxford Dictionary defines semantics as the meaning of a word, phrase, sentence, or text. So when we use the word change, it means to make something different or replace. The word evolve means to develop gradually from a simple form to a complex one. And you're going to see how this is a very fitting word as we continue to move through the episode. And while things are evolving with the show, I want to make sure I'm being as transparent and open with you guys as possible. Allow me some patience through this one, though, as I've had a difficult time organizing my many thoughts around this whole healing journey while it's happening. And let me tell you, it's exhausting being an observer and participant all at once. So, I knew I wanted to help people through this podcast by sharing knowledge and personal stories of my own, as well as highlight others' experiences and lessons. I've explained the name of the podcast before and why I chose it, but as I mentioned last episode, life is about feeling. Too often we're getting caught up in the verbiage and details, semantics, of a situation rather than focusing on the feeling, or we allow logic to cloud the emotion. Again, referring to last week's episode, I realized I was getting to a halfway point in healing, and then things would get hard, i.e. uncomfortable, because I would feel my emotions. I would get scared. My body would get that nervous, shaky feeling that Miguel talked about in the vulnerability episode, and I would turn back to my old patterns of pretending I was strong. I say pretend because semantics matter when we talk about healing, and I'll point out how a few more times as we continue, but this can be the first place I take a quick break to explain why semantics are important. The definition of pretend means to perform, and the definition of strong is a state of being. So when you're pretending to be strong, you're basically performing or acting like stone. You ever heard the phrase cold as stone to describe someone's personality? All right, so now let me break down why you get upset when someone calls you strong. Sometimes you're not feeling strong in your current state. So when someone says that you're so strong, you feel a twinge of annoyance. It's because the word as you know it doesn't match how you're feeling in the moment. Okay, you're telling me I'm so tired, and I'm saying, nah, you got this. You're so strong. Your feeling isn't being validated, right? It would feel more natural or intuitive if you said, I'm tired. And I said, I bet you are. It feels like more of a comforting feeling, doesn't it? That's because it aligns with your natural instinct, which is to rest when you're tired. Still with me? Okay. So there's another part to this for people who experience trauma, though. Their internal world gets mixed messages. Okay, the brain says strong, but the body says tired. Only you know that you feel tired, and you're not just saying it for no reason. But when they say you're strong, they are not validating what you just said you feel. So you're left feeling and looking even more confused or even getting angry because it's the same feeling you got as a toddler when you cried when someone pinched you and then an adult said, no, stop crying. It doesn't hurt. You're okay. Right? You're left wondering, like, I know what pain feels like, don't I? Is it this or is it that? And that is how negative self-talk starts, okay? I did a 3-part walkthrough on the victim mentality cycle we're stuck in, and it kind of ties into all this. So I'll be sure to repost those to the show's social media pages sometime after the release of the episode if you want to check those out. So something interesting I found on this side of healing is that everything people say to you about everything is right. They just don't explain the light bulb moment, or maybe they just don't know how. Thankfully, I've always been a chatterbox, and that has helped me sharpen my communication skills in a way I hope I can bring some understanding to it. So when people say you're doomed to repeat patterns, they're right. But what they don't tell you is that once you find out what your pattern is, you're going to find it in every area of your life, in big and small ways. For me, that included this podcast. I was getting caught up in trying to explain to the world what I want this to be for everyone and myself. And to be honest, when I listened back to every episode, I was left feeling like something was missing in my message. And recently, I realized a few things. One, what was missing is me. But hold on, I'm already getting ahead of myself. Because what was also missing was the emotion. My episodes didn't feel right to me because my internal world didn't feel right to me. My feelings were not matching my messages. And I want to make a point of this. Go back and listen to the other episodes because honestly, there's nothing wrong with them. But I was listening to them through a lens of negative self-perception. Now that I'm healing my trauma, I understand. No shame, no blame is more than words. It's a state of being that I have just recently discovered within myself and that I hope everyone can one day achieve. In order to bring that to you guys in a way I fully want to, I have to be able to first let go of all the shame and blame I have put myself through these past 35 years. I want to address a few things before I get into my story. One, I'm not saying these things because I want you to feel sorry for me. I don't need anyone to feel bad for me. I spent enough time feeling sorry for myself, and it really was only my shit to deal with anyway, just like yours is going to be for you. But I'm sharing because I want you to see if I can overcome all of these and finally get the lesson on the other side. My stubborn ass, who needs to make mistakes on my own, no matter what other people tell me, finally found my way. You can do this too. Next, this is just my personal life journey and experience. This is not a roadmap or life advice, and I'm not recommending you do any of the things that I say I've done or that I've been through on my journey. You live your life for you and however you choose. I'm not trying to victim blame or make anyone feel bad. Again, just my personal perspectives for this episode. As I've stated before, I'm not an expert, just an everyday mom who is physically struggling through life and somehow found myself along the way. Lastly, if you know me personally, hi, glad you made it. I'm going to be sharing some of my most challenging times throughout my life, and if you're a part of them, I will be as respectful as possible to not include your name or any personal information. Like the name of the show, I put no blame on anyone, and I'm not angry about what I said I experienced during my time in your life. But if you don't like how you're portrayed in a certain situation, try to remember that this is my perspective on our situation after a period of healing. But I understand if you can't be here to listen. Whenever you're ready for hard truths, though, I promise it'll be worth it. Trigger warning, this episode mentions childhood sexual assault, addiction, and unaliving. As mentioned before, my family history on both sides has multiple layers of trauma spanning back generations, which from a genetic perspective gives us an idea of how my nervous system was hardwired for high stress. But my experiences from early on in life would traumatize me even further and put my body into a constant state of fight or flight. Like my first memory at 3, when my body was frozen in fear and my mind told me I wasn't good enough for comfort. Or when my aunt's boyfriend snuck into my room when I was 4. So every night after that, I laid as close to the wall as possible, my face pressed against the cold plaster, my body in a state of fear as my mind synced to the feeling, to the mental image of something close to my face. Imagine my surprise when I discovered this is where my claustrophobia comes from. Or the times I was bullied into silence unknowingly by all the adults around me, who called me a chatterbox and made me feel like my voice was too loud and I had too many opinions. Who was left with strangers, whose kids around my age, maybe 5 and 7, clearly victims of abuse themselves, not only educated me about, but performed oral sex on me. To being referred to as the chunky, chubby, or fat sister by the age of 10, and being called fake in high school because I have the ability to connect with people across various interests, and the constant letdown of not seeing my parents, or when another day passed and my grandmother was drunk again. With a still developing mind, I internalized all of these thoughts. Why me? This feels bad. No one's protecting me? Does no one care? It feels bad. I don't know. I must be bad, right? Maybe because I'm bad, I deserve this? Or how being told I love you and then seeing their actions not aligning to what I knew love should feel like made me really confused. These things were simultaneously mixing up my natural internal understanding, i.e., intuition and feelings of love and abuse, with the still developing mind. I internalized all of these thoughts of why me? And no one's protecting me. Or do they not care? I must be bad. So maybe I deserve this. Or being told I love you, but not having their actions align to what I knew instinctively love should feel like. These things were simultaneously mixing up my natural born internal understanding of love and abuse and or pain, causing me to question, am I only worthy of kind treatment because of what I can do for someone else? This was the only time my brain recognized feeling loved, but semantics are important. I was being appreciated in a moment for what I did, not being loved for who I was. The hard reality is, I've never been in an environment where my nervous system could truly feel safe. By the time I started entering adolescence and realizing that my grandmother had a drinking problem, she was calling me every derogatory name you could think of and telling me I was going to be just like my mom, whatever that meant to her. I was now comparing my own body to my sisters and other girls I saw, picking out what was better about them than me. And to be honest, I'm still working on embracing my freckles to this day. You can imagine the social aspects at school were just an additional thing to navigate, as I was bullied by the group of girls I hung out with in middle school. I didn't speak Spanish, but most of them did. And the nickname they gave me translates to Shaggy because I didn't know how to take care of my naturally thick, wavy hair. I was being raised by someone 2 generations apart from me whose biggest worry was teenage pregnancy. She was not educating me on how to be a young woman. So I had a hard time as I was learning how to navigate that. Besides my grandmother at home, my grandfather retired from the military early, and he was kind of the one who put all the rules in place for us kids. Since neither of my parents had graduated high school, that was always his main objective. As such, he expected grades to be C's or higher. My older sister has always been extremely smart and well organized, so she set the bar, straight A's all the way through every school year. And because I struggled with math, my grades were never great, and I would always be in trouble. I felt compared to her, and since I clearly wasn't measuring up, I just felt like, again, something was wrong with me. I started smoking marijuana and skipping school in 8th grade. I felt like the black sheep of the family, so I guess I just wanted to lean really hard into that identity for a bit. And my rebellious nature loved every minute of it. Fast forward to high school. Home life doesn't change much from here on out, but before we get into thinking about hormones and physiological stuff that happens inside our bodies during these teenage years, let's take a quick inventory of my internal world, shall we? I'm a hurt little girl who never felt loved and had multiple wounds of abandonment and abuse up to this point in my life, with a low sense of self-worth. Enter dating. Like most 14 and 15-year-olds, I went into relationships with all the real-world messages about them that we get from society. So naturally, I took my time, I considered values and character. Just kidding. I fell in love with a boy who met everything I was learning I was physically attracted to because it was the early 2000s and sex. Need I say more about societal and media messaging? We'd been close friends freshman year, and by the beginning of our sophomore year had entered the sexual worlds together. Despite our close friendship and the physical nature of our relationship, we were not a couple. He would have other girlfriends, and we would stop talking, and when they would break up, we would start sleeping together again. You see, I was always too afraid to have that conversation because despite every sign clearly pointing to yes, my insecurities had me doubting that I was somebody that anyone could really like. I never wanted to ask and be disappointed by the answer, so for the first time in a romantic relationship, my fear of abandonment had me allowing myself to be used. Trust me, it wouldn't be the last. But we're all human, and as the saying goes, hurt people hurt people. I started dating the father of my children at 16. We'd been friends since middle school and complete opposites. I'd always had a unique bond with him, though. I remember we would hang out at a park in our neighborhood and talk openly about our home lives when we were 13 years old. I mean, being really honest and vulnerable with each other. So when we started dating a few years later, it felt good and comforting. We knew each other's struggles. But we were also young and each carrying our own internal messages about who we were and what our worth was based on our childhood traumas. A few years into our relationship, now adults, I didn't feel like my needs were being met, and I cheated on him for the first time. We broke up but reconciled not long after, and just continued moving through the relationship the next few years with those insecurities consistently lingering and adding up as I repeated the cycle in various ways. Not directly cheating, but I would be talking to someone or maybe reconnect with someone I knew I shouldn't. There was even a time I lied and told him I was pregnant and had a miscarriage because I was so desperate to get him back. At the end of August of 2011, I found out I really was pregnant with my oldest. I remember, even as someone who wasn't spiritual, the minute I saw the positive test, I dropped to my knees and prayed the most sincere prayer of my life in that bathroom. That my child would not have to pay the debt of all my past mistakes. I begged not to lose them as a consequence of my past lie to keep their dad from leaving me, even though I had given him every reason to. My familial relationships around this time were also getting worse. In fact, I got in an argument with a relative when I was pregnant, and they said they hoped me and the baby died in a car accident. I know, awful. But I wasn't any nicer to people around me at the time in my life either. I mean, yes, I never involved kids or death, but that's only because I knew exactly how to toe the line and still hit the mark every time to piss someone off with my words. You know, my ability to adapt can serve me in a nice way or a harsh one because I can truly match energy. Clearly, this all happened at a phase in my life where, as I had mentioned before, I was an aggressive communicator. I think my motherly instincts kicked in for sure after I got pregnant with my oldest, and I thought I had to be strong for her. There's that word again. But strong doesn't mean hurtful. And I was harsh towards people. I would attack them personally to win arguments too. That's what I grew up witnessing. But it's still not an excuse for how I made people feel, and no one was on the receiving end of my mouth as often as the father of my kids. I understand now that we had a similar vision of what we wanted for life, but our trauma was a roadblock we didn't even see, let alone know how to navigate. So we were kind of doomed to repeat our own family of origin traumas, as I've been mentioning, but also creating new emotional trauma within each other and our family of procreation because we were not healed first. Obviously, this is all in hindsight, but we were doing the best we could. That time in my life is a blur. As most young people who grew up in poverty and had a child, we focused on creating financial stability. We both worked full-time jobs. I was in school pursuing my degree. And this is also the time I started helping manage my grandparents' doctor's appointments, as they didn't seem to be understanding what they were being told about their health as they aged. That opened the door to becoming the person my family turned to for help with understanding legal documents, medical information, taxes, honestly, a lot of things. Despite how much I was helping the people around me, though, I saw my relationships still weren't changing. So again, I went inward. The problem had been me this whole time, right? I'd been making poor choices, and I wanted to understand why. I think this is a good place to take another break from the emotional depths and come up for some air. So let's bounce back to logic and talk more about semantics. If you notice, I've been using the word strong when I talk about these experiences. I'll continue to do so through this episode, but from here on out, we won't be using that word here on the show. Instead, we will replace it with power. According to the Oxford Dictionary, power is the ability to do something. So a brick is a good example of strength, as I mentioned before. If you're a brick, you just are without trying, and you'll always be something solid. But we're not like bricks. We're more like batteries. I discussed energy in episode 3, so you can go listen to that for a bit more context. But like a battery, we need to take time to recharge. Wait, what? You said you heard that before? Interesting. Unfortunately for me at the time, I didn't understand that we can fill ourselves with more than one source of energy, and I wasn't recharging my social battery or my love for nature battery or any of the other batteries that make me, me. Fast forward to 2023, and we find ourselves with 2 growing girls, our own home, and 2 paid vehicles in the driveway. On the outside, we were successful partners in all areas of our life together, and that was true, except emotionally. I mean, yeah, we were vulnerable and became each other's safe space in a lot of ways. But again, because our trauma lied within us and not the relationship itself, we were always trying to heal the wrong thing. We were on step 2, relationships, in the order of life, if there was such a thing. which your first should be yourself or spirit, God, whatever you want to call it. And before you clutch your pearls and start calling me blasphemous for saying that, Karen, just chill, all right? Give me a chance to dig my hole a little deeper through this episode and on my religion episode before you come judging me, okay? But I mean, come on. We were made in his image. He is within us. You never walk alone. I can give you reasons that you're wrong too. Need I go on? Like, come on, guys. The semantics of it all. Okay. Anyway, I digress. Where was I? Yes, the separation. So I had personally been struggling in my relationship for years, and I'm not going to get into all that because what it really comes down to is that I realized after 17 years, I was still asking for the same things from my partner that I had been asking for since we were 19. And internally, I still was not feeling like anything was changing. I still struggled with my body and felt like I could never do anything right. But that feeling made me start being honest with people about how I was feeling, that I was tired. Not like I need a nap, but deep down soul tired. I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. But honestly, I don't even think that was the hardest part. Looking back, the thing that broke my heart the most was that I was pouring into everyone around me, always doing something for them, always explaining my schedule or updating someone in my family about someone else, the busy secretary that interacts with everyone, yet no one sees. I cried at my sink doing dishes, in the shower, or to sleep alone in my bed more times than I can count. Little me threw many tantrums that looked like anger when the weight got heavy. And still, no one saw her. She looked out through my eyes and begged for someone to help fix her. But what I didn't realize is no one, no matter how much they loved me, could help heal what they couldn't hear. And neither could I. After recognizing the pattern and knowing our girls deserved more, I ended our 17-year relationship. It was a very emotional time for us both. Again, I found myself being consumed by the heaviness of my soul. I decided I wanted to take some time to figure out what my self-care needed to look like because what I had been doing still wasn't working. I decided to relocate for 6 months to work on myself and thought it was a good opportunity for everyone else around me to start helping carry some of the responsibility. I made sure to move far enough away that I couldn't drive back without some planning first, because I knew my control issues would have me wanting to come back and handle everything myself if someone missed an appointment. I spent most of that time alone, working, doing weekly EMDR therapy sessions, and allowing myself to do whatever I wanted without judgment. Whether that was laying around all day, going for a walk, reading, going to the gym, whatever I felt like doing, I did. It had only been a month when I noticed the bruise-like pain in my left breast. I'll get into the full scope of my breast cancer journey on another episode, but for now I'm just going to stick to the highlights. It was the most emotionally devastating news I've ever received. I thought back to the prayer I said in that bathroom for my children and wondered if instead of them paying for my actions, this was the debt I had to pay for them instead. I thought back to every time I treated someone poorly and how it could have impacted their life negatively, the way so many other people's words and actions had done to me. I wondered how I would be remembered and what people would say, if I would see my kids grow up and all the things that I would miss. Whew, sorry. Allow me to take a quick beat here because as I mentioned, I'm still healing and I can feel myself wanting to fall back into victim mentality around the breast cancer conversation since it's all still fresh. But see what I'm able to do here? I have integrated enough that I can now feel and acknowledge the resistance and tightness in my body when my nervous system thinks going back to these memories is equally as scary and dangerous as encountering a bear. And I can use my mind to communicate to my body that I'm safe. See how this ability involves two parts, the mind and the body, right? The head and the heart. That's what you're trying to integrate through healing. But stick with me here, because now I understand why these things are so complex. Everything I just explained is a zoomed out, big picture explanation of what healing entails. If I give you the analogy of a Russian nesting doll, everything I just explained would be the biggest doll, okay? The one that you see. Now, allow me to pull back the curtain. Just like the big picture had two parts, so does the work around feeling and thinking. The two emotional parts are acknowledging and identifying the feeling. Not always easy, okay? The mind's parts involve noticing patterns and intentionally rewiring them, okay? The cycle of your pattern is the victim mentality, and you're in the cycle because you're always falling back into negative thoughts about yourself that others put there. Like me being a chatterbox. Internally, that made me sad when I heard it. And that also explains why I get so upset when people would make comments like that about my youngest daughter. I know it was meant to be playful, harmless banter from the adult's perspective. But when you highlight a certain personality trait of someone and then mock them for it, I'm here to be completely real and honest about how harmful it can be. And I guess this is the perfect segue back into my dark night of the soul. I decided I didn't want to leave to chance what people would say about me if the worst happened. So until my number came, I would be intentional with how I interacted with everyone. Telling my daughters was the hardest part. I had to pull them out of the childhood world of wonder and fun that their dad and I had tried our best to create for them. I always worried the world would change their pure hearts and harden them like the rest of us. I think that's why it was so difficult, because I was the one guiding them out of the childhood. But then the thought came to me that it was better that I, their mother or father, who loves them more than anything and knows what greatness they have to offer the world, should be the ones walking them out of innocence and childhood, instead of thrusting them out of it violently like I was. So, with that in mind, I grabbed both of their hands and explained to them it was okay to feel mad, sad, scared, or angry about my diagnosis, that those emotions had a purpose, and it was okay to feel them. They were there because they loved me. Like the ground beneath our feet, our love for each other is that stable, solid ground, and that lets you know you're safe. And the negative emotions and thoughts are the clouds hovering over you. They're for a reason, but always moving. Don't get swept up in the storm trying to hold them in place. Just notice them. Thank them. For without experiencing all those emotions at once, we wouldn't know heartbreak. And because the physical world is about duality, we also wouldn't be able to fully appreciate love. Looking at that message now, I can see the same applies for all of us in everyday life and with trying times. But zoom out. Little me was just like my daughters, born worry-free, on the grass, feeling the sunshine with open-mindedness and excitement. But the adults and experiences I had forced the child in me to experience more rainy days, alone than I deserved. Alone and scared, honestly. And because of that, I thought that was all there was to the world. I got used to the storm clouds being there, even though they gave me seasonal affective disorder. I missed the sun, so I decided I would be my own light in a dark, stormy world, and not only be mindful of how I treated everyone else, but also myself as I battled cancer. As I've said before, easier said than done. Especially as I watched my weight creep up over 200 pounds and I was so depleted of energy, I would wake up on the couch after hours of sleep, realizing that I had fallen asleep while trying to watch a movie with the girls. Or the hardest part, a month after my treatment began, when every pass of my brush pulled away clumps of my hair until it was so thin I could barely put it into a ponytail. Like most women, my hair is a defining feature of mine. But if you know me personally, you know I'd always been attached to it. Most of my life, I had kept it long, down to my waist. There would be these amazing, thick, dark curls. I don't know, maybe my protection in a way. But when I was diagnosed, I had it cut short, like on the new logo image. Yeah, I did that a few years prior, still seeking internal change, thinking letting go of my old appearance would somehow help me feel better on the inside. Funny how we focus on outside things when we know it's really within us. The day after I was diagnosed, my landlord at the vacation home called and offered me the opportunity to buy the place. I knew I wouldn't qualify since I still own my home in Denver, but she said she would finance the loan herself and use the last month's rent as the down payment. When she sent me the numbers, I would actually be paying less if I bought it from her than I did when I was renting it. So I decided to keep it. And I thought it would be a nice place for me and the girls to visit in the summer. I gave a guy I knew and had been involved with around that time a key so he could go in and check on the place for me once in a while. Since I was separated from my kid's dad, I definitely relied on that situationship a lot and would share my struggles and insecurities around how I looked and what I was going through. Deep down, I knew he wasn't emotionally available. He gave me breadcrumbs of attention, and I wanted to call it love because it was still more than I had been receiving from most people in my life, and anything was better than nothing. I thought of him as my parachute, catching me as I was in free fall, handling all of these things all at once and still fighting internally. I went out with the girls one weekend to visit and had brought a window AC unit. I didn't want to risk someone pushing it through the window when I was gone, so I bought a few hidden cameras and put them around the property. A month later, I came back and was checking the footage. I'm sure you can guess what it caught. The guy I had been spilling my heart out to about everything had brought another thin, beautiful woman into my home and had sex with her on the same couch my kids had been sitting on only a few weeks prior. If I'm being honest, this was probably the lowest point I have ever felt. The woman also had the same amazing waves that I once had, down to her waist. And honestly, I don't know if I cried for hours because of the disrespect I felt from him bringing someone into my place of respite, or because I felt like it didn't matter who I was to people or how kind I treated them. I would never be good enough. But life still had to life. So, like everyone else who treated me crappy, I stuffed those feelings back down because I didn't want them to control me. I moved through the next few months numb, still keeping him in my life just like I had everyone else who had ever wronged me up to that point. Do you see my pattern yet? I finally did. And the next part was acknowledging my pain and heartbreak, being honest with myself in a constructive way that would benefit my growth and then alchemize it. This is my purpose, to use my past pain, experiences, and knowledge along with my natural, higher source given ability to communicate and create something that allows me to help people by spreading love while simultaneously learning how to listen more deeply so that I may continue to learn and grow in that love as well. Looking back has been hard. It took me a lot longer than usual to get this episode together because I still hadn't fully processed all of these emotions, and I was too afraid to go back to some of these times. But again, no shame, no blame is an embodiment, meaning a tangible feeling, not only towards others, but towards ourselves. We should all strive to get to a place where we can carry no shame, no blame about who we authentically are. We aren't our actions. So, yes, I have had people that were deep in their own pain use my body. And I have had every single person titled friend disappear from my life. And I used to be sad about that. I carried a piece of them with me that held the door open because that was the small ray of hope I held on to, that these people would recognize my worth and come back to that little girl in me who had been let down, who needed and wanted approval from everyone around her. When she was so desperate for that love and approval, she made poor choices through her pain too. I've been cheated and cheated on. I've lied and been lied to. I've had affairs and been a part of affairs. I've been used and used by others. Energy always comes back. See the pattern? Cancer forced me to stop, pause, and critically judge myself for not only how I impacted others, but how they were impacting me. And I was still holding on to it through my victimhood. And this is why people say your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. As without, so within. Healing your inner world is the only path to seeing and feeling abundance in life. Social media glamorizes the happy moments which we strive for, but the growth and healing happens in the dark, sad ones. It's not about comparing struggles. Two things can be true at once. Yes, going through cancer was challenging and it sucked and it was hard and all the things, but so is what you're going through right now, no matter how big or small, because it's about how you're feeling inside. I'm ready to move on and let that scared side of me go. And it's funny how clear you can see outside of your pain. Even the old logo prior to this episode didn't feel right to me because I was ashamed of my past and what people would think of me or how they could use it against me. But now I honestly don't care what you think of me because I know me. And that logo, that woman who went through the cancer battle and all the trauma before, I love her. She stood strong when she had no idea what was really happening. She had moments of clarity and way more moments of uncertainty and not feeling like she knew where she was going and what she was doing. But she still somehow got me here. And my kids know me, you know? I've been talking to my oldest a lot lately about everything as she gets older, and I'm an animated talker. And once in a while, she starts laughing at something I do and will mimic like my hand motion or something. But because I'm still a work in progress, right, and healing, I was immediately getting insecure and I would be like, what do I look dumb or stupid? Like, oh, I know I'm so cringy. Like all these negative words to describe what I'm naturally doing. And she sweetly always catches me and says, no, mom, it's not that at all. It's because you did this and it was so cute. Or no, that reminded me of that one time when this happened. I'm her mom, right? She looks at me through a lens of pure, unconditional love, just like I look at her. I know who they are and they know me. We are not our choices. But if I hurt you at any point throughout my life prior to this episode, I am sorry. And I hope that you truly find healing. And to all of you who were part of my life, who was involved in any of these stories or any of the other ones I have, you're all forgiven for the small and the big stuff. I'm genuinely happy. And that's because I know who I am. You know, slang word pressure kids say nowadays? It took me a long time to see it, but I'm pressure. You see, despite my pain, when people are around me, I expect them to elevate. And I don't mean that in a, I'm so much better than you, come up here with the always crisp type of way. I just mean in being me, okay? If you really know me, you know I enjoy learning and I enjoy these topics and I have deep, meaningful conversations and I'm multifaceted in my interests and I always take it into deep personal territory. And I thought people left because something was wrong with me. But now I know it's because the things I say do hit deep and that can make people uncomfortable. I don't allow you to stay in your pain. I'm challenging you every step of the way to step out of it, sometimes even with tough love. And those who can't handle the pressure will fold, and the ones who can will turn to diamonds, okay? Either way, I'm motion. So I'm going to just continue to do me and do what I do, right? I'm standing firm in my power now. And let me tell you something. They were 100% right about me. My voice is loud. That's because I'm the cycle breaker. I'm the voice who is going to scream for my ancestors because they struggled all the while praying for me, the one that was meant to be standing here right now, strong enough to face their past traumas while also carrying my own. The breaker of my familial chains, whose understanding of love for people, despite the pain they caused me, looked inwards for healing towards myself, not outwards to addiction or unaliving like others before me. This is my Logizomai, which means the accounting of one's life. My day of reckoning, where I have to reflect and weigh and then pass judgment on myself here in the physical world before I one day have to do that before the Creator. Because I've shown multiple times through this episode duality, as above, so below. My body has physically danced with the red devil and come out the other side. And now I can see that so has my spirit. And I found two things in that darkness. The first was the scared little 3-year-old girl standing in that doorway. And I had to treat her like I do my own children. I had to stop and love her for a while and tell her I was sorry it took me so long to see who we were. And after letting her cry for a bit, I began to calm her fear by speaking life back into her, telling her how powerful she is and reminding her of what she will do and be someday to the world. I used these moments as proof of her resilience instead of letting her sit down in her sorrow. And that's the same tough love I have given all of you. The second is my gratitude for the light. I used to think I appreciated things, but I've talked to a friend recently when we were speaking of gratitude, and she said, "But I am grateful. Every night I close my eyes and I pray and I say, I'm grateful for hot water. I'm grateful for food. I'm grateful for the roof over my head." And I said, "I love you, babe, but it sounds like you're just reading from a list. Do you really feel grateful when you say that for hot water? Do you?" She's like, "Of course. Yeah, I feel grateful. I appreciate it." And I was like, "Okay, but do you appreciate it in the way of like if you stood outside playing in the snow for hours as a little kid and then you came inside and you had a hot bowl of soup and some hot chocolate, like that comfort that you get from those things? Or when you step into that hot shower and you feel your whole body relax? Do you feel that feeling when you thank God for hot water? Because if you don't, I'm sorry to tell you, you're not grateful. And these are the kind of small moments that we need to be honest about ourselves with to slowly start changing our neural pathways and breaking the cycles so that we can start our healing journeys. I don't know what's on this side of healing yet. I'm new here. But I know if I could accomplish being the first to get my bachelor's degree and to buy a home for my children, and I can do all of these amazing things as I push through pain, I cannot wait to see what I can do in my power. So stick around in future episodes to find out. As always, make sure to take some time and give yourself love today in whatever form you need. If this resonates, feel free to visit my website, www.nsnbpod.com. That's NSNBPOD, all one word.com. There you can catch up on my latest episodes and find all the social media pages. I would appreciate it if you'd like, follow, and share to help spread the word about the show. More people may need to see this than you realize. Also, I'm still looking to have guests on the show if that's something you'd be interested in. Or if you just want to drop a line to say hi, you can contact me at nsnbpod@gmail.com. That's NSNBPOD, all one word, @gmail.com. Thanks for joining, everyone. See you in 2 weeks. Love you. Bye.